Yo, Elliot, now that I have been practicing no fap, I noticed that when I get down with my lady, I've become a premature ejaculator, which was never a problem before. In fact, I used to last too long to where it was annoying. Now it's like I can't control it and I bust right away. How can I manage this? So, before I get into my opinion on this, I just have to state that I'm not an expert, but I'm on this journey with you. And I have been doing semen retention for the past 2 months, and I do it in my sexual relationship with my wife because I don't masturbate. But I was having sex and ejaculating multiple times a week, and so I come across this thing, I don't know what you call it, called Careza. This practice is a practice of Careza. So which is essentially, if I boil it down to it, it's having sex but not blowing your load. Just keep having sex but not ejaculating, which is interesting because as young men, first of all, as men, we're goal oriented. So there's got to be an end for us to be satisfied. That's just our nature, right? We want to get to the bottom line. We want to get to the solution. We want to get to the conclusion. We want to get to the ejaculation, right? Because then it's done. And so when we first start, I would say that 95% of us had our first sexual experience with Miss Palmer and her 10 daughters or 5 daughters. Right? Most of us, it came through masturbation. And so we set the stage for ourselves to get to the goal as quickly as possible. I don't know about you, but I remember, right? I think the first time I fapped, I must have been about like 12 or 13 years old. And it was just a mad dash to that busting nut. It was as quickly as I can, whoa, and as fast as it could come, the better, because it was like I just wanted to get to that gush, right? And so what ends up happening is we then treat sex the same way because it's in our nature, and then it becomes a practice, so it becomes ingrained in us to hurry up, get to it. And so there are a few things that I've learned over the course of the past few months while I'm practicing Careza, which means give your wife all the orgasms she wants. According to this one book called Energy Careza. 2 books I recommend: The Gentleman's Guide to Careza, Gentleman's Guide to Careza Sex, and Energy Careza. I don't remember the author's names, but you can look both those books up. And so I gather from reading and then also from experience, and I'll tell you a few things that I've learned as a result in order to better control myself, because it was never a concern to me. I never even thought of it until coming across these ideas of how semen retention. Look, I'm getting older and I need to bust less nuts, which reminds me there's another book I want to bring. Oh, I just had it here. Before I get into some of the techniques that I've learned and that might be helpful to you, here's another book. So I think it's important, and in this book he makes it clear that it's not that we never blow our load ever again, but there is a optimal time of retention that a man based on his age should go. So, I'm doing my best to last as long as I can, but there should be an end point. And I got to find it in this book. Oh man. He tells you, okay, here. So according to traditional Chinese medicine, this is how often you should blow your load, which is most healthy. If you do it any more than this, then you're making yourself weak. You're losing your vitality. And I started to feel like I'm losing my vitality as I was getting older. I'm wondering what's like going on with me, and I was starting to have ED. I was like, wow, I don't want to have sex. And it turns out, no, I didn't have ED. I was just blowing my load too much. You need to stop blowing your load. Not stop having sex, stop blowing your load. Guess what happened when I stopped blowing my load? ED went away. I just need to wait long enough to build back up my vitality. And then as long as I don't blow my load, especially for this period of time, there's no ED. There's no ED. Guys who have ED, I'm telling you, part of the reason why you have ED is because you're blowing your load too much, too often, too soon. Stop blowing your load and ED goes away. Here it is. The ancient texts give the following advice. For a man of 20 years, once every 4 days. So once every 4 days, you should blow your load. At 30, once every 8 days. That's a challenge. At 40, I'm 40, once every 16 days. So really the goal for me is to get past 2 weeks, right? If I get past 2 weeks, and so right now I'm on day 9, right? And the longest I've gone is like 2 weeks, right? And I'd like to go longer too, just for a challenge, just to challenge myself. Just to challenge myself. At 30, once every 8 days. At 40, once every 16 days. At 50, once every 20 days. And at 60, once a month. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? So they give us a guideline by which, this is according to traditional Chinese medicine. He says, there are clear guidelines in traditional Chinese medicine about ejaculation of sperm. In general, not more than twice a month is advised because of loss of qi. Other considerations include a man's health and age. The ancient texts give the following advice. For a man of 20, once every 4 days. A man of 30, once every 8 days. A man of 30, once every 8 days. 40, 16 days. You heard me say it anyway. Just reiterating. So I think that gives some of us a starting point. Now, that is if you're having sex. I don't think he addresses masturbation in this book, but if you've ever read Montauk Chia's book, The Multi-Orgasmic Man, he believes in masturbation, but not to ejaculation. He believes that by masturbating, you're basically, you're having sex with yourself, right? But you don't do it to the point of ejaculation. You do it simply to circulate that sexual energy. That's what he says. You build it up and you circulate it through stroking, but it's not even really masturbating because you're not coming to a conclusion. And so given that, and then these guidelines, you could see that there's something, something for us to strive for. I'm not sure that these guys, and some of you are, maybe you, who are allowing your dick to go dormant for 60, 80, 90 days, I'm not sure that that's the best way. Because what I've heard, I don't know, happens is if you go too long without blowing your load, first of all, it could be bad. I don't know to what extent, but I've heard that it's not so healthy for you. And then also, your body will start to forget that you could get a boner. Your body will start to forget what it's like to be sexually aroused. And then it's harder for arousal to come on. And then you become like asexual, like you just don't want sex anymore, which may be okay if you're a monk, right? Maybe that's what you want as a monk. But as a man, married man having sex, you want to stimulate, you just don't want to ejaculate. So, once again, I haven't gone 60, 90, 100 days like some of you guys. I'm aiming for what the traditional Chinese medicine book says, which is 16 days, right? And I'm pretty sure I really made it a concerted effort because I would consciously blow my load sometimes. And now I'm just going to stop consciously blowing my load. I only have mistakes. I only have very few mistakes, but there are times where I'm like, I just have to do it. Right. And I don't know what that is. That's the demon within me, but 16 days for me, and so on and so forth for you guys, a week, 2 weeks, whatever. But that's not the problem for you, right? Because you're not jerking off, which is good. You're not fapping. You're getting with your girl, and as soon as you get inside her, you're blowing your load, which is the problem. I'm gonna stop you guys' videos when you come in. And so here are a few things that I've learned. I read some of these, and I practiced some of these techniques so that you can last longer. Number one, and I'm gonna be all over the place here with these because I'm just gonna call them out as I think of them. Number one, you got to recognize what your deadly positions are. There are certain deadly positions for me, and it's just usually the same for most men. And the deadliest positions are when you're flesh to flesh with your whole partner, right? When your whole body's lined up. When your whole body's lined up and touching, right? So if my wife is completely on top of me or I'm completely on top of her, and our flesh is our chest is touching, our belly is touching, our legs are touching, everything's touching. That's a deadly position because you're hyper aroused because too much of your skin is touching, right? If you're touching and you're really touching, then there's hyper arousal. You could use your imagination, but there are certain positions where you're pulled off. You're not fully, the skin's not fully touching. It's just what's between the legs. This is what's happening at the hips, right? So you could just think that there are certain positions where you can just get the hips involved, but you're not on top. And not to say that the whole sex act needs to be that way, but I'll talk to you about recognizing, when to pull back and when not to. But you got to know your deadly positions. There are certain deadly positions, and those are the positions that you want to be careful with. The other thing too is there's deadly movement. When you're jacking your hips and when you're moving your body, the orgasm reflex, according to Wilhelm Reich, is a wave-like movement within the body. And then you get to a particular point where the root, which is your prostate, because of this movement, right? Because of this humping movement, you get to a particular point where you're like snaking, right? And what do they say? There's like a snake hidden down at the bottom of the pelvis, right? This is according to some philosophies. But really what that is your prostate. And that prostate starts pumping. And so you got to get this, you have to, sometimes instead of you humping, you take her body and you move it back and forth, right? So you stay kind of still and you move her body, right? And she'll like that too. You move her body. But the minute you start moving, you're starting to wake that snake. You don't want to wake that snake up. You want to keep still, keep breathing. Another one, I'm just throwing these all out here for you guys. Just pick and choose. I find that when I'm on my feet, I have better control when I'm on my feet, right? And there are certain times of the day I have better control. I have better control at night than I do in the morning, right? Just be paying attention to myself, and I'm giving you these tips so you can figure yourself out too. When I'm on my feet, I have total control when I'm on my feet. I have endless control when I'm on my feet. But if I, get off my feet, well then, it could be different. Morning time is a deadly time too. So those are the deadly situations that you can avoid. Here's another thing that I discovered that we have to learn how to do. When we get sexually aroused, we get tense. I don't know if you noticed this, but I'll even, especially in the morning, because I'm not as in control of myself, I'll notice that my breathing changes and I'll tense up certain parts of my body. And I'll even tense those parts of my body in anticipation of ejaculation. And so we have to pull back that anticipatory tension in our body. Because when we have that tension in our body, it's like we're trying to push it out. You ever feel like almost like trying to push your ejaculate out, right? It's like it feels so good that you're just like, you squeezing your butt and you're like you're almost pushing it out. What you got to do is pull back that tension back into your body, and then breathe and soften all the muscles in your body. I used to do this meditation where I would scan my whole body from top to bottom, and I would feel like what it feels like. Like I would just imagine like a scanner, like a supermarket scanner, scanning from the top of my body to top to the bottom. If you breathe, right, just breathe. And I'm giving you a whole lot of stuff here. One of the things you got to do is you got to breathe longer. 5 seconds in, pause 5 seconds, breathe, exhale 5 seconds. As you're breathing, scan and feel your body from the bottom of your feet to the top of your head, right? This all while you're having sex. That's why a man has to be in control of himself when he's having sex. A woman, when she's having sex, she lets go of control. This is huge right here. We act like women. That's just the way it is in our culture right now. We know nothing about being men. We get most of our ways from women, behaving like women, thinking like women, mommy. And women, they let go in ecstasy during sex. And in a way, because we're effeminate, we do the same thing. We want to have sex. We want to let go in sex. But it doesn't work that way for men. Men, again, we have to build our value. The burden of performance is always on the man. And that's okay, because that's what being a man's about. That's what we signed up for. And I'll take that responsibility. I'll let my woman have all the orgasms she wants and let her fully let go. Let go, baby. But the man, right, she needs to surrender to the orgasm. And a lot of women can't even do that. They can't even surrender to the orgasm. So they are too masculine. These women that can't surrender into the orgasm. But men not supposed to surrender. Men don't surrender in orgasm. Men maintain control of himself during sex. You got to be self-conscious during sex. You can't be ecstatic. It's not for us to be ecstatic during sex. It's not for us to let go during sex. It's for us to be focused during sex. I know this is crazy. It sounds crazy. And it almost sounds like, well, what's the point? Well, you'll see, because there's a great advantage to having lots of sex but not blowing your load. So breathing, scanning your body, be aware of your whole body. If you find that you start holding tension, all of us are different. I will start to like squeeze my butt, or I'll like squeeze my feet, or my breathing will get shallow. If that starts to happen, then you have to back off a little bit and then allow those areas of tension to relax. And then you relax that, right? So you're stroking, right? Maybe she's on top of you, you're on top of her, whatever it is. You're doing the thing, but you're conscious of yourself. If you get wrapped up in her, the way she looks, the way she's moaning, the things she's doing, you're going to lose yourself. She will take you off your focus. You got to focus. It's work, but it's worth it. Another one, I'm just giving you, again, this is not like a comprehensive ebook where you're just going to follow step by step. It's me just telling you stuff off the top of my head. Clench your teeth. I breathe through my nose, but I clench my teeth. I read this in a book called The Tao of Sexology many years ago, but I don't know how it works or why, but if you clench your teeth and keep your face relaxed, and breathe, it gives you more. I have more control when I clench my teeth. Why? I don't know. More control when I clench my teeth. And I'll give you this last final tip, right? The last final tip. You have to be aware of your state of arousal. We got to be aware of our state of arousal. Like I said, men can't let go in sex. We don't have the luxury of letting go in sex if you're using sex for cultivation like we're talking about right now. If you're just using sex for, or masturbation, you just want to blow your load because you're addicted to orgasm, that's a totally different thing. But when you're a man that's cultivating his masculinity, cultivating your sexuality, then sex becomes kind of a workout. But it's so worth it. I don't know about you, man, but it's so worth it to be able to please my woman that way, and to be in just master of my domain, right? I'm in control. I decide when I'm going to let go. So you got to be aware of your state of arousal, and you got to give yourself maybe like, from 1 to 5. 1 being like, hey, I'm good. I can keep going. 5 being, it's about to blow. And you don't want to get to the point where it's about to blow. Because then there's other techniques that you got to do, like, they call it the $1 million spot, right between your balls and your butthole. You got to take your fingers and you got to jam it right there, right where the semen is supposed to come out. Jam your fingers right there and hold it, and your prostate might even be orgasming, like pumping, but you don't let that semen out. And I've caught that a couple of times. I've had to do that. Boom, and then you go into like a crunch and flex, and you go, argh! Right? You got to forget about the girl, right? Throw her off you. Boom. Ah! You got to bear down on it and hold it and like flex your abdominals. But you don't want to get to that point because that's terrible. You don't want to do that. So I'm kind of losing steam here. But I thought that was a great question. And those are some good things to look into. Look into those books that I'm talking about. The Gentleman's Guide to Carezza Sex. Look into The Multi-Orgasmic Male. Look into Energy Carezza. It's a book that I think is out of print, but is well worth reading. It's written by a doctor. And then, of course, Listen to Your Body. I mean, basically what I've said in this is just one chapter on sex energy. And just remember, right, most of you guys are in your 20s. So once every 4 days is not that bad. I was doing that in my 30s and 40s. And then I started losing my vitality. In your 30s, once every 8 days, so on and so forth. So I hope that helps, dude. Done.
Yo, it's your bro Elliot. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, you ought to know that it was a clip from one of my most recent King Transformation classes with my students, where, among other things, we get together about 4 or 5 hours a week and we speak on things as it relates to becoming kings in our lives in fitness, business, and with women. If that sounds like you and you want to join a like-minded group of men who are growing stronger every day, in every way in this degenerate age, then it's real simple. Just follow me on Instagram and then DM me the word king, K-I-N-G, and then me and my team will get back to the details to see if you qualify. I really hope to see you at the next meeting. Done.